You are listening to the Delay and Pray podcast, episode number 87.
Welcome to the Delay and Pray podcast, where certified Catholic and weight loss coach Beth teaches you how to permanently lose weight through spiritual fasting. Get ready to gain faith and lose weight through a joyful transformation of both body and soul. Now, your host, Beth, the Catholic Fasting Coach.
You know, everyone, in the Delay and Pray group coaching experience, part of our rule of life is to add a weekly daily mass, 1 hour of adoration, and monthly confession to our monthly schedule for 1 year. We talk about this as year 1 in order to actually get to daily mass every single day by year 5. So we add this gradually. And we talk about these sacramental activities as non-negotiable. So they are as important as a meeting with our manager at work or a doctor's appointment when we find ourselves ill. We don't cancel those appointments, and so we don't cancel our sacramental appointments. In this way, we see Jesus as our eternal manager and eternal physician. We simply cannot cancel on him as our lives and livelihoods depend on our relationship with him. So I've noticed in the past year, since I've reached that 5-year mark of spiritual fasting, where I go to daily mass every day of the week and spend 2 hours a week before the Blessed Sacrament, and typically go to weekly confession now that my fasting has improved. When I do these things, my fasting really does improve. It's just easier to fast. And I've noticed that especially this summer, with a lot of traveling, new grandchildren, and many activities, if I've missed Mass or I miss my adoration on occasion, I find it harder to fast. So there's a correlation here, as you can see. It has to do with grace flowing in and through my intellect to talk my will into doing what is really for my highest good. The more grace flowing into my possible intellect, the better my actions. This all makes total sense. So Bishop Barron describes adoration as a fire of love. He says to fully absorb the love of Jesus, one must catch fire before the Blessed Eucharist on a consistent basis, and he lists saints, countless saints, to prove that this is true. Doing this will fully warm your soul to the point of deep conversion that will lead you to a happiness that cannot be known otherwise. So the correlation of spiritual fasting with the sacraments, meaning adoration, Mass, confession, and rosary, makes keen sense because through this time, we are allowing the Lord to do his great work in us. He is transforming our stony hearts of egoism, it's about me, to his sacred heart, which is about others. And then soon after that, year after year, that transformation takes place to that final phase where we just want to please God. And we go and we think, it's about you, God. It's really only about you. It is no wonder then that I hypothesized 5 years ago that there is a correlation between increasing obesity in women with the decreasing of Mass attendance and sacramental attendance. There is a pattern here. Without the Eucharist, we are left on our own path. We are left to our own devices. And this is deadly for both body and soul. And who ultimately gave us this beautiful sacrament of the Eucharist that should be the center of our Catholic lives? God, yes, but the Blessed Mother as well. From her sinless flesh came our spotless victim, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. As we celebrate this month, the National Eucharistic Congress is happening in Indianapolis, Indiana. This is taking place this month, an event that I am attending, and I'm so excited. It's very near my home. The Church understands and upholds the importance of the Eucharist, especially in the Mass, adoration, and confession. They all go together. And the Blessed Mother always points the way to her Son in the Eucharist. So it is, as St. John Bosco described in a vision, that our Church, our Catholic faith, only stays afloat if soaring along the pillars of the Eucharist and the Blessed Mother. And I'm going to be doing an entire podcast in the near future on this vision and the importance of these pillars. But in the meantime, I have a guest who wrote an amazing book on the Eucharistic saints and the importance of the Eucharist, and it's fantastic. It has that exact title, Eucharistic Saints, 20 Stories of Devotion to Jesus. It is written for children, but I hung on every word. I found myself rereading many pages and learning so much from the beautiful and profound content of this book. obviously, it was brilliantly written for adults and children alike. Please purchase this book and give it to all of your children. Gift it for baptisms, for communions, young and old. Gift it to your grandchildren and all family members and friends who could use a little Eucharistic boost at this time in our culture. It's phenomenal. There is nothing better that you could do right now but to proclaim that the Eucharist is our source and summit of the Catholic faith. The Eucharist and the Blessed Mother will save our church. These two precious pillars are a must in your life if you are to become fit in body and soul through spiritual fasting. You simply cannot do it alone. So with that introduction, I want to introduce you to my guest, Meredith Hinds, the amazing author of this extraordinary book. Meredith Hinds is a writer, editor, and mother who lives in Colorado with her family. Her first project for children was A Saint a Day, a devotional published by Tommy Nelson. When she's not writing saint stories for children, Meredith is probably reading with her own kids, writing about family life, or trying to find her gratitude journal. Connect with Meredith through her website, meredithhinds.com, or on her Substack newsletter, stilltoday.substack.com. And of course, we'll have all of that information in the show notes for you. Hi, Meredith. Sorry for that long introduction, but I wanted to state the facts of the importance of the Eucharist. And I loved your book. I thought it was so uniquely written because it's not just facts. It's actually from the eyes from other people who were around the saint at this time. And then there's some that I've never heard of. So phenomenal. So tell us about yourself, why you wrote the book, and your mission.
Well, I'm a mother and I'm a writer. I have 5 beautiful children. My husband and I converted to the Catholic faith about 8 years ago now. And I have been so blessed to get to work with stories about the saints. So that was one thing right after we converted that we were still learning about. And I think all of us are learning for our whole lives, of course. But that was one of these things, the intercession of the saints, that I didn't really grasp fully, I don't think, until after, a couple months after we had become Catholic, and then really started to rely on it. I need the intercession of the saints to make it through the day. And now I would never give that up now. But it was really a neat thing to get to learn about saints through these writing projects. And this project in particular, this one about Eucharistic saints, I wrote it over the course of the same year that my oldest child was preparing to receive his first communion. So that was one of the things that I was thinking about as I was putting this together, was what really engages my son. And it's not the lists of facts, even though those are really good to have. It's stories. What he really loves to hear are stories. And children love the saints. I think that they love looking at their pictures and they love hearing about their lives. And I really wanted to create something that families could use together, either in a context like family adoration or just at home, or as the parent and the child are preparing for that child's first reception of the sacrament together.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. That is so great. And of course, you're a convert.
Yeah.
Some of the best Catholics are converts. It's so funny. I was a Catholic school teacher, so I have a way in my faith where I'm not super theological, but I'm pretty much kind of like Father Mike Schmitz, who kind of brings it down to a level of conversation. And people often ask me, are you a convert? And I'm like, no, cradle Catholic here. But it's the converts really that they find something and then they're just enthralled with the newness of like the intercession of a saint and what that saint by intercession can help us with. And people miss that. So you centered on the Eucharistic saints. And why was that?
This was in partnership with the publisher, with TAN. They wanted to create something that families could use during these years of Eucharistic revival. So that really was the influence that got me thinking about, okay, which saints will help families look at the Eucharist? And the very funny thing about that is all of the saints love the Eucharist. You can't find a saint who doesn't have this profound love for the Eucharist, and instances in their lives where you can see them loving the Eucharist and relying on the Eucharist. So in that way, it was like with 20, we really can't go wrong, but here's 20 that we'll choose, that many of whom people already know pretty well, and some who people might not know as well, to just get people looking towards the Eucharist like the saints did.
I love that. Well, the first one that you go through is, of course, St. Thomas of
Yeah.
Aquinas. And St. Thomas Aquinas is phenomenal. And I love how you have this pattern. I just wrote a book too, and I had a book coach. And so now I notice all the patterns. I notice how there's a structure to writing. And I love how you have like a word, like reward, and then the saint, St. Thomas Aquinas, and then the feast day, and then a little bit about the saint and how to say it, which I think is beautiful. But then your story is unique. I love it. So this first one, I'm here thinking, okay, let's learn about St. Thomas Aquinas. I know a lot about him anyway. And you're starting off with Brother Leo, which I am like, oh, this is neat. And how he keeps forgetting to put out the candles. Yeah. Okay. And he's so imperfect. He's so imperfect, like all of us. And I'll let you tell that story, but that was just really sweet. And then he actually comes to see him levitating.
Yes.
Rising in the air. And then we get benediction here.
Yes. At the end of the story, you get to, if you so choose to take that opportunity, you've got like the Latin and English there to read with your child or whoever you're reading it with. So hopefully families can kind of make that connection, because I think sometimes we don't know that it was St. Thomas Aquinas who wrote that benediction. So we might have heard it.
I did not know.
It was him. It was him who wrote that. And so it's one of those things that we can put together as we're looking at this story.
Oh, I love it, Meredith, because my whole course is Thomistic. I teach a thought model that's Thomistic. The way that I have put together the ontological man from Metanoia Catholic, they got it from Father Chad Ripperger, who got it from St. Thomas Aquinas and the Summa. And, we all have our like rendition of it. Okay, I've studied this, right? I didn't know that. And what I'm going to do, okay, so when I read this, because they've heard it, I'm going to sing it. And they're going to be like, oh, I know that. I know that.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to sing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And with those people who live as religious, they do a lot of singing, and they still do. And I think that that's an important thing for children to know, is that this part of their fabric of their daily life is their praising God. And perhaps those, like, we can all sing. It's great for all of us, in whatever vocation we're in to sing. But I think that even just like reflecting on that there are these groups of brothers and sisters who are singing prayers for us all the time, all around the world. Like, it's just this very consoling thing to know about, and can foster love for our faith.
Yes, absolutely. Love it. And so your goal for this book was really to foster family adoration, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was one of those things that my family and I had started doing at a parish close to our house, was an hour of family adoration a week. And that has been really good for all of us. And it was a beautiful realization for me, because at first I thought I was going for my children. And then over the course of the years, of course, we're going together, but I'm like, this is really this time of nourishment for me. And it's not just, I need to bring my kids here so they can have this. It's, I need this. I need this hour of adoration in order to go about my life, to have my week, to live out my vocation as a wife and a mom. I need Jesus, and I need that time with him. And now it's something that's just part of our life. And I'm so grateful.
I love that. And how lucky you are, and I was, to have a church that offered family adoration, because there's no way you're going to take 3 kids, 5 kids, 8 kids to adoration. It would be very disturbing. It is messy.
It is. And yeah. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing that a parish can offer, is like, this time for us, it's that 9 to 10 hour on Tuesday mornings. And the whole parish knows, like, there will be a bunch of children in here. And if you want to come and go to adoration with a bunch of children, you can. But if you want a silent hour, to go at a different time. And the vast majority of the hours are still, of course, silent hours. But to have this space for families where we're teaching our children about silence. But of course, it doesn't play out that way all the time. No, that's not what's going on. And we do some things, like we do read stories and we sing songs. And then it's like, okay, now everybody, we're going to have a time of silence. And so they're getting to practice that, which is really beautiful. And they're beautiful childlike faith, because we tell them this is Jesus, and they look up and you can just see that belief. Like, they believe that is Jesus.
Yes.
And that is so wonderful for me as a mother, to be encouraged by their faith.
Oh, it's so wonderful. I'd have to find it, but I have a little notebook sheet of paper that my daughter wrote in second grade. And it was just in the car. And she says, I'm going to see Jesus. Jesus is my everything. Jesus is God. And she just keeps writing. And it's just in this pencil. And she's 26 now and still goes to adoration. So I want to tell you, Meredith, that
Yeah.
so that is so interesting. There's all ways to structure family adoration. That's amazing. So our kids went to Catholic school. We went to a small Catholic school that was very Catholic at the time. And so they went to mass, they went to confession if they were old enough, and they went to adoration every week. They also said the Angelus every day. So these were things that our kids were raised not only Catholic at home, but at the school.
Yeah.
Like it was a Catholic life. Like their lives were Catholic. It wasn't like, oh, we're human and we're also Catholic. It's like, no, we're Catholic humans.
Yeah.
And so we had family adoration at a different church after school, and it was from 4 to 5. And I still believe they still have it on Fridays from 4 to 5. What a fabulous way to start the weekend. But what was really funny, and what everybody needs to know, because I'm 59 now and all of my kids are adults and they all go to mass, they're good Catholics, is that I can remember my son, who was oldest. He was probably, I don't know, 5th grade or so, maybe 4th. And he was at this particular time, maybe he was younger. I was across from him because the Eucharist was like on the side, and the way it was like a U, and he wanted to sit across, and he was used to this, but he was cracking his knuckles, and then he was tapping his foot on the kneeler. And I just kept looking at him like across, like, okay, you can stop that now, because it was silent.
Yes.
Well, then he would do something else. And then I gave him the eye, like the left eye that was like, you better stop it or you are dead. And he was like, oh. And then he would go get a different book and everything. But it was really funny because at this time, there was a young woman who was in there who I know today. And she was probably in her 20s. And she was just watching this interaction between myself and Nick. And she was trying not to chuckle, but she was like, oh, she means it. And I mean, and he was straightening up. And it was times like that it's so worth it. It's so worth it because it's not going to be perfect. It's messy, but your kids have to learn that there is a time of silence, that they're before the Lord. And I always tell them in life, like, I know this is happening. I know this is really hard, but keep your gaze on Jesus, like Peter, like just keep your gaze on him. Run to the sacraments. And so it's funny because I remember going to a Catholic conference for middle schoolers, and I remember not being able to pull my 6th and 7th grader out of adoration. They just wanted to stay there all day. And I was like, oh my gosh, that warmed my heart. They're not perfect, by the way. They're not. And then in high school, they had adoration at the Catholic high school, and they often went to adoration before tests and things like that. And then, of course, just last year, my daughter had a little girl, but she had a rough pregnancy, ending up with preeclampsia. And where did she go? She ran to Jesus in mass and adoration. Okay, so all I want to tell everyone out there is that it seems messy to take your whole family to adoration. You've got to do it. It's just like a non-negotiable. It's like a doctor's appointment. It's the eternal physician just gazing at your children and healing them. And you just have to do it, as crazy and as obnoxious sometimes as it is, because ours would just be filled with kids. And you're literally at some point, you're just looking at the Blessed Sacrament going, I don't even know why I'm here, Jesus, but I'm here. I'm here.
Right. Well, and I think that it is that process of teaching our children, like, where to go, like
where to go.
Where do I go? And you hear later about people who never knew about adoration growing up. Like, they had never, either for whatever reason, they had never seen it until they were adults. And I think that's sad that no one ever showed them, like, here, this is the place where you can go. And you will need so much more than your parents in order to make it through the things that you are going to go through. And this is where you go. You go to Jesus. And there is an actual way to do that. Like, physically, you can place yourself in front of him. And I think that that's really beautiful.
Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. Well, okay. So the next saint that I read after St. Thomas Aquinas, I just love this book so much, St. Jacinta Marto.
Yeah.
So I just got back from Fatima.
Oh, wow.
And I literally prayed at the tomb of St. Jacinta and St. Francisco. And I want to tell everybody out there, when you go to where they're actually buried and it's relics, I mean, they're there, it's very emotional. It's a lot of tears. And you're just like, oh, they're there. they're literally, they're blessing everyone, kneeling, praying for intercession from these particular saints. And I actually was able to go into where she was born and her house. And I know the story very well. And so it was beautiful. So interesting that you chose Saint Jacinta out of the three children. Tell me why.
I think that part of it was because of her witness as a young girl to love Jesus. Because I think that I wanted to represent both men and women love the Eucharist. And so we wanted to have stories about men and stories about women and stories about, I think that sometimes like our own little girls can look at someone like St. Catherine of Siena and be like, but she was so much older. And St. Jacinta, kind of the amazing thing about St. Jacinta is all of her sainthood was lived out as a child. She died as a child. She never became an adult. And I think that that can be a really powerful witness to children that you don't have to wait to grow up to be a saint. You can be a saint right now. And she gives this really beautiful witness of that. And then also part of it was in reading the diary of servant of God, Lucia. There was such an interesting relationship between the two little girls, like these little cousins, that I thought we can do something with that there. We can have servant of God, Lucia, watching her cousin. And that could be a really interesting thing to kind of go into and to have a story about. So that was one of the reasons to choose Jacinta, was both like the relationship that already existed there to see her really through her cousin's eyes. And then also just to tell children, like children can be holy too. It's not just adults. It's not just popes. It's children who are telling people about the kingdom of God now.
Oh, absolutely. The little children shall lead them, right? So we all need to become like children to get into the kingdom of heaven. Well, I love how you told that story through the eyes of Saint Jacinta, because the focus is on Lucia.
Right. Yeah, the focus is on Jacinta, and it's Lucia.
Right. Oh, I meant like when we're talking about Fatima, like in
Yeah.
the secrets, it's always Saint Lucia, like is like, well, she's blessed. But you know what I'm saying? We're always kind of like, so what did she say? And we're like, well, always thinking about her. And all of a sudden, the focus is more on Jacinta in your story. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's just beautiful. And I think what's really sweet about Jacinta is, you know what? Like Lucia is like, okay, so don't tell anyone that the Blessed Mother is appearing. And she just goes and tells.
Yeah.
She's still a saint, everybody. She's still a saint. So it's like,
keep it in. She couldn't keep it in.
No, and how often do we do that? We have our own little secrets and we can't keep it in. And then we're like, oh, I want to be so good. And after confession, we fall again. And it's like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. So who is your favorite story? There's so many that I've never even heard of Saint Benedict, like Joseph Lebray. I've heard of him, but I never studied him. And there are some in here that are just like Saint Pascal Balan. Yeah. I mean, I'm like, wow, this is so fun.
Well, and Saint Pascal Balan is a good one to bring up because he's the patron of Eucharistic congresses. So as we are looking toward that congress that you're going to, he's a great one to ask for his intercession because he's the patron of all Eucharistic congresses.
Yeah.
So as this Eucharistic Congress comes together in Indianapolis for our country, and with these beautiful Catholics who are gathering to do this, I mean, I will not be there, but I will be praying for all of you who are there and definitely asking for his intercession for that time.
Oh, thank you. I never even thought of that. I never even thought of asking his intercession as I travel down and back. I am very excited. It's 2 hours away from me, which to me is like in my backyard. Yeah. I think of it that way because everything else seems so far away, know?
Yeah.
And this is an easy one for us.
Yeah.
And there's no hotel rooms left in Indianapolis. Like I know Indianapolis very, very well. And it's just exciting. It's like, oh my goodness, it's in Indiana. And I live in Michigan, but I'm a mile out of Indiana.
Okay.
I mean, I'm the very lowest house in Michigan you could live in. Like I'm right there. I'm just over the border. Yeah. And so that's just going to be amazing. So I'm very excited. And then the pilgrims who were the Eucharistic pilgrimage came through our church at St. Mary's at Bristol. And that was last Sunday. So on their way from, I believe it's Minnesota, all the way down to Indy. Yeah. So just a lot happening with that. So excited. And I think we need to get our kids excited about all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to tell them about like the pilgrims who've been coming from all different parts of, and like the Eucharist itself, traveling across the country. I think that that's something that children can really get excited about and get the visual of that. And there've been such amazing pictures that people have been posting of their attendance at the pilgrimages and that kind of thing too. It also could be really fun to look at a map. Kids love that. Kids love
They
looking at
do.
a map. So yeah.
I love it. So I'm hoping also that this revival will bring back more Eucharistic processions.
Yeah.
I am telling you, when there was a Eucharistic procession through New York City, it was last year, and I can't remember exactly why. There was a reason. People were just getting in line. I mean, people weren't even Catholic. People were fallen away Catholics. They were just getting in line, and it was the Sisters of Life, and it was other sisters that were posting on Instagram and Facebook what was happening. And it was phenomenal. So bringing that back would be amazing. And
Yeah.
I did Eucharistic processions and rosary processions, both at Fatima and Lourdes. And Fatima, it was raining and kind of dark and misty. And it was kind of like a profound experience. It was beautiful. But it was, I don't know, it was just like, it was more profound than beautiful. It's like something's coming, like something's happening. This is really amazing. And it hit me differently than Lourdes. So when we got to Lourdes, Our Lady of Lourdes, the procession was just filled with healing and beauty, and it was sunny and gorgeous there. And I guess it rains a lot, so we got there at a great time.
Yeah.
But it was thousands of pilgrims
Right.
with lit candles,
Wow.
walking with people that wanted healing. They're not even wheelchairs, they're almost like beds on wheels, little tiny like hammocks kind of
Yeah.
like type things. And it was so beautiful. I had two different feelings, two different places. One almost like repent, and then the other one, if you do, you're healed. I mean, just it was just a healing. It was just beautiful. And so more processions. So there was Eucharistic processions, and then there was the procession with the Fatima statue or the Lord statue or whatever the statue was of the apparition site. All of it bringing us way closer to Jesus, but all of us also just really centering our lives on the Eucharist and what he is about. So I love this in this time. And I think that your book, it just needs to be on everyone's shelves. And it's something that even if you concentrate with your children or your grandchildren, maybe on one of the saints a month, and really letting them get to know that saint and why, and maybe even looking up some words. Like I forgot what Spy Wednesday was. I had to look that up. And and so, I mean, these are cute. So you could literally ask, you know how kids love to you ask them questions. So what do you know what Spy Wednesday is? No. Well, what is that? Why don't you go find out? Tell me what that is.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to look at in each of these stories. And I did try to include some things like that would be interesting for them to ask a question about. Or there are stories like this St. Thomas Aquinas story and the St. Jacinta story do include prayers that you can say right then. Like Tantamirgo is a song, but you can sing, you can pray, you can ask questions with these kinds of things. You can, I mean, if they want to, there's a Blessed Carlo story later in the book in October, because that's when his feast is going to be. That his Eucharistic Miracles website is live, like it's still there. And so there's a lot of different things that people can look up with and do other activity type things with their children for those things.
Well, and you know what? That is another part that I think we can really tell our children, and they really need to know about the Eucharistic miracles. So
yeah, absolutely.
On our pilgrimage, the first stop after Fatima was Santarem, and the city of Santarem, where they have a Eucharistic miracle that is exposed over the altar. It's closed until you say Mass, and then they expose it. So we were the beneficiaries of Bishop Strickland saying Mass underneath an exposed Eucharistic miracle, and we were tearful. We were crying. That it was very powerful. We were praying. I had all of my intercessions that I had written down from all my clients and my family. I had them with me, and I was praying for them. We were all kneeling also on the pilgrimage, you kneel on stone or wood. None of the kneelers have padding.
Ooh, yeah.
And I learned to do that. And so then we came back to the States and there was like a padded kneeler. And I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Wow. Never thought I would be thanking God for that. But it was just so beautiful. So that Eucharistic miracle was basically based on a woman who was having hatred for her husband because he felt that she was not cheating on her and not being faithful and disliked her immensely.
Mhm.
So she unfortunately went to they call it a sorceress, or I don't know what a psychic. And this was an evil person, said, well, bring me a consecrated host and then your husband will come back to you. And so the woman was a fallen away Catholic, I believe. And so she said, okay, I'll do it. So she went to church. She actually put the host in her mouth, left the church, took it out. And she was actually going to take it to this sorceress. And the story goes is that she decided not to because she actually saw it bleeding and it went on to like her clothing. So she took it home and she didn't know what to do. So she put it in a trunk in their bedroom, went to bed with her husband that night. There was lights that were emanating from it. And so the story goes, they were converted. And she took that back to the church where they have it today. And it still has blood on it. It's just crazy. And
it's unbelievable.
It's such a miracle and it's so beautiful. And I've never seen anything like this before where it's actually above the altar. And so when any priest goes in and says mass at this particular church, they can actually open up this, I forget what it's called, where the monstrance is inside of it, and this cabinet, and it's exposed. And it was Bishop Strickland is just so reverent. So then when he's elevating the host, elevating Jesus, then the miracle is right above it. And
That's
it's just
incredible. Yeah.
Deep conversion there. And I think our kids can learn from all these Eucharistic miracles.
Mm-hmm. And there's such fascinating stories, like the story you were just telling about the woman who, there's all this trouble in her marriage and she's taking the consecrated host and like all these details, like these kind of weird details, like children love that.
They do.
They love that kind of stuff. They're like, she what? That kind of thing. And when I was reading about Blessed Carlo and some of these Eucharistic miracles, like they often happen to a person who is doubting or a person who was in some state of like being fallen away in whatever sense it was, that God reveals himself through this Eucharistic miracle, and that it's this gift to this person who wasn't in this place of really believing. And I think that's so consoling for us to hear that these Eucharistic miracles were given to people who needed the hope, who needed to see it. And I don't know, I think some of us can, even though maybe it's not like that kind of story, but we can kind of place ourselves in the position of like, is this really the body and blood of Jesus? And that we can experience some of that conversion by looking into these different Eucharistic miracles.
Oh, Meredith, I think you really just hit the nail on the head there. Okay, so I believe in the Eucharist, body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, and so do you. But now I understand why after the Eucharist, you go back to your seat and you kneel and you say, Lord, I do believe, but help my unbelief. Because if we truly believed, like we would just be so overpowered. But a lot of times you have your 5 kids and you're taking the Eucharist and of course you believe, but it's like to be super reverent and to know that as you are taking in this Eucharist, which a lot of times they've done some studies, like Father Chris Alar has said that when they do studies of some of the Eucharistic miracles, it's actually heart muscle.
Yes.
And so it's the heart of Jesus. So I always say, I believe, help my unbelief. And then, Lord, turn my stony heart into your heart. May your heart come within me and turn my stony heart into your heart. And I can kind of almost see it and I can taste it. It's just like I use all my senses now. We can all have deeper belief, even if we believe, even if we totally believe, we can all, through these Eucharistic miracles, have more belief than we have.
Yes.
So I love that. I love the concentration on the Eucharist. It is perfect timing for right now. It's just perfect timing. And I will definitely take the intercession of, say that again. How do you pronounce it?
Saint Paschal Balan, but it is
Paschal Balan. Okay.
Yes. So he had these visions of the Eucharist for his whole life. So that is my prayer for anyone attending the Congress, is that it really is this powerful, like you see him.
Oh, I will pray that too. I'll pray 2 hours and I'm actually going by myself and I'm kind of excited just because I'm going to pray all the way down. And then I'm meeting up with a very large group of people. So I will pray all the way down. And I really can't say enough to all of you out there, especially my group of spiritual fasters. Spiritual fasting is challenging, and we all are challenged by it. Obviously, prayer and fasting cast out demons. So it's never going to be easy. So we work very hard at it, especially as a group. I think this book is going to help. I know it's for children, but I think it's for adults, Meredith.
I think it's for families. It's for families. That's what I wrote it for. I wrote it for families. I wrote it for people who have children in their life who they love, which, hopefully is all of us.
It's all of us.
Some child that we love. So
yes, it is. But I see it as if you have adult children and you're a lot of my clients are trying to pray their adult kids back into the faith. I think if you give this to your grandchildren, but then have like these fun conversations with your adult children, like, did you see the story on Father Pascal Balon? Did you see that story? This is interesting because did you know the Eucharistic Congress is going on? You could just have this real lighthearted conversation and they're like, no, I didn't see that. And it's just, you're opening the door just a little bit.
And the illustrations are really beautiful.
They're so really beautiful.
Adelie Huge, she has other books that are incredible, but the team did a really good job putting together a beautiful book. And I think that can really reach people sometimes when nothing else can, is to interact with something that's beautiful. So I know, aren't those gorgeous? Those are the end papers. The end papers of the book are very, very beautiful. And even
end papers.
The front cover has this gorgeous picture of a monstrance, which I think is inviting for anyone, no matter how old you are. So
yes. And then also I did make a comment I wrote down in my notes that I love also your first page before we begin.
Oh,
so I think that's really important. You can look for Jesus in the Eucharist in the life of any saint. He's never very far away. As you listen to their stories, remember this: we can become devoted to him just like the saints were. With the help of their prayers, we can see the Eucharist for what it really is, Jesus himself, now and always. And I think that's really important to highlight that.
Oh, thank you, Beth.
This has been amazing, Meredith. I think this was such a great holy opportunity for the two of us to get together. And this was perfect for me after my pilgrimage. I was just like, my pilgrimage was so Eucharistic. And Marian, obviously the Blessed Mother and the Eucharist, and Bishop Strickland constantly talks about the two pillars of the church by St. John Bosco being the Blessed Mother and the Eucharist, and that we need to be drawn to these two pillars, and that will save the church. And if ever there is corruption or weak priests or something going on in the church, it's usually because they have fallen away from either the Blessed Mother or the Eucharist. True belief, true devotion to either of those two things. We need to pray very, very hard during this Eucharistic Congress and this time that all of our priests and all of our bishops, cardinals, and the Pope, they draw strongly towards the Eucharist and the Blessed Mother. And then we will see all kinds of miracles happening.
Miracles. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Meredith, any last words?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and just a deep desire for your audience to, whatever way that you're going to, draw closer to Jesus. And I love your emphasis on the Eucharist as this food that we need and how important it is, and just to let nothing distract us from that. And that it is our appointment, of course, like at Sunday Mass and at Adoration, that we can just, that there is so much strength there, that the strength that we need is there. So
absolutely non-negotiable. And everyone, take your families to Adoration. I don't think it was just a given for me. So like when I was reading through your information, I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. Not a lot of people do family adoration. And
show your kids. They will believe you. They are, especially like the very, very young ones, they will believe what you tell them about that monstrance.
I love it. You're a blessing, Meredith. I have loved every moment of this. Any other time you want to come back on the podcast, anything else you have to say to help us to spiritually fast through the devotion to the Eucharist, just give me a call for sure. And thank you so much. You are just a blessing.
Thank you. This was really fun for me. So thank you so much. And have a great time going to the Congress, Beth.
Thanks. I'll pray for you and your lovely 5 little kids.
Please do.
All right. God bless, Meredith. I hope you enjoyed this podcast with Meredith. The Eucharist is key to fasting success. Do you want to learn more? Well, come join us in the Delay and Pray group coaching course. Get on the wait list for the next enrollment and share this podcast with your friends if it was inspiring to you so others will hear the great message of Delay and Pray so that we can build this spiritual fasting movement together. Have a great week, my friends. Keep fasting and praying, and I will talk to you next week. May God bless you and keep you always. If you are interested in learning more about spiritual fasting and permanent weight loss, then come join my course, Delay and Pray, a guided course for weight loss through spiritual fasting. You won't go through it alone either. I will be there to coach you every step of the way. This is a group coaching program where you are part of an amazing community of like-minded Catholics who have the same goal as you, to bring about miracles while losing that weight permanently through spiritual fasting. Your purchase includes an online course detailing what spiritual fasting is, how to do it, and all the tools you need to get you the results you're longing for. Head over to my website right now at thecatholicfastingcoach.com and get the details on how to join. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and LinkedIn to always get the latest daily information to help you keep fasting, my friends. Can't wait to see you in there. May God bless you and keep you always.